Hi, Ashley. Welcome to the Nurse Wellness Podcast. How are you today?
Hi, Wendy. I'm great. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So, I am a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner, and I am also a business owner. The name of my business is Psych Life Tea Company. And that business, essentially, the premise is to raise awareness for mental health by creating teas with beautiful letters and beautiful messages and affirmations of hope for those who suffer with mental illnesses.
So, how did you get into the business part of what you're doing? Because, being a nurse, right? Nurse practitioners, we are very patient driven. How did you make that transition?
That's a great question, Wendy. So I have to go back to earlier in my career as a psychiatric nurse. I started in psychiatric nursing back in 2016. And when I started in that niche of nursing, it was like no other nursing area that I've ever been in. It's very specialized. The patients are very different than any other patients you will encounter. They have so many um, guilt driven behaviors. They have lots of shame. They have lots of fear and lots of stigma in terms of carrying, a mental illness diagnosis. And the population that I treated first in terms of nursing is adolescents. And that's when I learned, just all these guilt-like behaviors that haunt them, and these guilt-like thoughts and these self-defeating, negative thoughts that really haunt them. And it really drives their behavior to continue behaving negatively because they're believing those lies, right? And it perpetuates this ongoing cycle of behavior that causes them to become self-injurious and just different behaviors like that. And so then after I was with the adolescent population for about a year, I moved into the adult population. And what's so odd, Wendy, is although the adult population is, much older than the adolescent and child population that I was with for that year, the common denominator was the same in the fact that they also had so many behaviors associated and so many thoughts associated with, this I'm not worthy kind of thing. And I don't feel love, and no one wants to be around me because of this mental illness, and no one accepts me. And, the list goes on. But essentially, the guilt, the shame, the fear, the stigma associated, and the embarrassment, the shame for the family. And I thought to myself, man, if I could do one thing to help them, like, how could I do that? And I was thinking that it would be by outward expressions of affirmations, and, beautifully so, because people connect that way. If I had on a shirt that, I'm from Alabama, and I'm from Auburn. So if I have on an Auburn University shirt, and it's a Nike shirt, you're going to know two things about me. I love Auburn and I love Nike, because I could have had on a shirt that's Auburn, but it's not Nike. It could be by somebody else, right? I support Nike though, right? And, so I thought to myself, man, if I could create like a line of products, specifically teas, apparel, to show people before you even speak to them that they support mental health, that they are mental health advocates, that they're going to be an advocate for you, a supporter, a non-judgmental, non-biased person who you can talk to and open up to, because this person is going to hold space for you. So that's essentially my vision for the business, is so that when you see the clothing that I have on, you know that I'm a supporter of mental health.
I think that is so amazing. And when you first started talking about the adolescent population, I was like, well, that's everyone, right, across the spectrum. And I was also thinking about the unseen trauma, right, of mental health, the stigmas, the people kind of suffer in silence, so to speak, especially
Absolutely.
now being, in this pandemic. Mental health, mental illness is so important for us to recognize. And I love your why. It's really to start the conversation so people feel safe. If I have a T on and I'm supportive of mental health, we can normalize the conversation around it.
Absolutely, Wendy. Because I didn't say this, but let me just say this. The bulk of my psychiatric nursing experience has been on inpatient units. It has not been in an outpatient setting, right? And so when people check into an inpatient setting, they're so vulnerable, Wendy. They're so raw with emotions. They're scared. They don't know what to expect, Wendy. And that fear can paralyze you, right? And so you're already, as I said, in this very vulnerable space, and you're already in your head about whatever led you to checking into this inpatient unit. And, sometimes those things that led you to check in can be, in hindsight, people can internalize them as being very embarrassing, right? Maybe someone who attempted to die by suicide, they took some medication and they might be embarrassed by the fact that they made that attempt. And so when you arrive to a new unit and you see people who are adorned with these beautiful, affirming, uplifting messages of hope, it can really lower your anxiety. It can really make you feel, man, there might be hope. Man, maybe these people won't judge me. Man, maybe I can get help here. And so that is my hope and my wish, that when people, as I said, when you see these messages, that you immediately connect and feel like that this is a place that you can be vulnerable and get help, and know that these people will help you in a very non-judgmental, individualistic way, that they're going to do everything they can to ensure that you have all the resources you need to fully recover.
Wow. While you're talking, so what I'm going to say here is that, to that point, we need to have your T's in healthcare systems, in psychiatric institutions,
Absolutely.
in group homes.
Yeah.
So that is, wow. I'm thinking about scrub. You're in T's, but maybe you can go into the scrub industry, even like scrub tops, to have psych nurses, psych personnel wear these shirts to make patients feel comfortable.
Exactly. And as a matter of fact, through LinkedIn, I have had a couple of psychiatric nurse managers that have reached out to me, and we created, the people, they looked at my tees on my website and they were like, okay, I want that tee for the unit. And essentially I took that design, changed the colors to be reflective of the colors of that hospital, and voila, it was a design that was specific to their unit, and we added their name on the unit, and it was just accepted so well by the unit, by the patients. people loved it. So I was very excited to know that it did make a difference.
Well, that is amazing. So any of our listeners, if you are a psych nurse or you work in a group home, please connect with Ashley. I think this is an amazing initiative that should be adapted nationwide. I think it's like, it's so simple, but so impactful.
Absolutely.
Oh, wow. My
Yeah.
goodness.
And the thing of it is, Wendy, words matter. Words matter, Wendy. And so often you can be in your head. I particularly have never been in an inpatient unit as a patient, but I can only imagine how they feel. I have, suffered with a mental illness for 16 years. I've had depression and anxiety. I am thankful that I am stabilized, but the illness is always there. The negative thoughts, they come and they go, even for me. And I am a licensed mental health professional. So if my negative thoughts come and go and I'm stable, I can only imagine, you know what I'm saying? The thoughts that run rampant in someone's head who's not necessarily stable and who's contemplating, should I get help? Who's contemplating, no one will ever accept me. People will think I'm quote unquote crazy. And I hate that word crazy. I hate that it even exists, because the thing of it is, no one is crazy. We're all in this life and we all need help in different ways, and that's okay. It's what makes us human and what makes us individuals. And another thing that I want to say is that so often, people think of life in terms of being parallel to one another. And I don't actually agree with that. To me, life is full of intersections, twists, turns, we're all in this thing together. You know what I mean? And if you stop thinking about life as a straight and narrow road and start looking at it as, this place of intersections, you'll understand that we really should be more interdependent on each other, lean in on that interdependence, because it will get you out of your own head, Wendy. You will, stop isolating so much and start talking to people more, because you will find once you start talking to people more that we all have very similar thoughts, Wendy. And, that is irregardless of your race, your gender, right? Like, it's just amazing how when you finally open up, how you realize that there's so many commonalities. And I wish that people would do that more. And so it's my hope that when people see these teas, they will start opening up more about their journey and being very transparent, because you can't recover fully and wholly if you're not transparent about the things that have haunted you. You will only skim the surface. And that's not where the work is, Wendy. You have to go deep and really do the work so that you can recover in a holistic fashion.
You said so much there. I just want to unpack some of it. So we are all connected.
Absolutely.
I think that's first and foremost. Despite your letters, your degrees, we are all connected. And I want to thank you for being transparent about your personal experience with anxiety and depression.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is so important as healthcare professionals. That's one reason why I got started on this journey of stress management in nurses, because stress can be a predictor of anxiety, depression, substance abuse, suicidal ideation, right? But I think as healthcare providers, we can get our signals mixed, so to speak, like we're the provider, we're the strong ones, we have to take care of everyone. But no, we are people. We are just like the people we care for.
Yes, ma'am.
First and foremost, because as humans, we're all on the same level. And I love what you're saying about the intersection. That's not like you're not on a one-way road by yourself. You may think you are.
Absolutely.
And that's half of the battle and the problem.
Yes, ma'am.
So
Absolutely.
I love that you said that, and we need to recognize that we are not in this world alone.
Absolutely.
And more so, if you are having mental or physical illness, you need someone, right?
Absolutely.
So what would you say to listeners who are on a one-way road by themselves and feel like they can't reach out, or they can't join the intersection, they can't join the community?
Mm-hmm. That's an excellent question, Wendy. I think the first step, when you feel isolated, when you feel like there's no hope, when you feel like there's no help available to you, is possibly to go to your primary care physician. The reason why I say that is because so often there is this stigma against reaching out to mental health professionals. Many people, quite frankly, don't know how to do it. They don't know who to trust. And if you already have established a primary care physician, it would be best if you go to that doctor and ask that doctor to recommend a mental health professional, such as a therapist, a psychiatrist, a nurse practitioner, whoever they have relationships with. I think that's the first step that I would take if I were in that space.
So I have a question. I know that sounds very simple, but how would you start that conversation with your primary care doctor? Someone you're seeing, you don't have a diagnosis of, mental illness. What are some tips on how to start that conversation before you can even get to the referral?
Oh, I love that question. So oftentimes, Wendy, when you go to the doctor and you've been experiencing mental illness symptoms, you don't necessarily go to the doctor because you have a mental illness, right? You go for some other reason. Because what happens, Wendy, is that your body, when you are battling a mental illness, especially depression and anxiety, but any mental illness can do this. Your body has a low threshold in terms of immunity. You can't fight. You start getting sick all the time. Your sleep is impacted. And when you start having effects like that, I can't sleep at night, I lay awake all night, I'm looking at the ceiling, I'm counting sheep, nothing's happening, it's going to affect your cognition, it's going to affect your behaviors in terms of your ability to just talk to people on a level where there's no anger. You're going to start being irritable, you know what I mean? And you're going to start having outbursts. So you're going to be pushed towards the doctor in some way, right? And so the reason why you may go, it might be because you've been having headaches. It all relates to mental health and mental illness, because the doctor's going to be, they're trained and they're going to unpack why you've been having these headaches. And we'll just go with that example. For instance, you're sad and depressed and you're very anxious, but you've been having headaches or you can't sleep. Okay, so you call and you make a doctor's appointment. I can't sleep, I'm having insomnia, or I've been having headaches. You get to the doctor and they're going to unpack it by saying, kind of tell me how long you've been having these headaches, or tell me how long you haven't been able to sleep. And so you will tell them how long, and they'll ask you if you're having nightmares, they'll ask you, because there's a key here. Let's go with the inability of sleep. If you're having nightmares, they're going to automatically know that there is probably some processing issues going on, or some trauma that has occurred, or some depression that's going on, anxiety. They're going to automatically know that it's mental health related. Okay. And so they're going to go ahead and screen you at that time. They have these really good screens, the PHQ-9 or the Beck screening. And they're going to screen you to see what your level of anxiety and depression is. Okay. And be very transparent, be honest. Don't sugarcoat your screening, because you're not going to get the help you need if you don't answer the questions appropriately, such as, and over the period of 7 days, how often have you felt worthless? That's a question. Over the last 7 days, how often have you felt you're better off dead? That's a question, Wendy. And, there's this scale, if you will, and you put the number of days that you felt that way, and they add it all up to determine your severity, right? And so they'll know, depending on that number, the help that you need. And again, it's not going to be accurate if you don't answer it accurately. Be as transparent as possible. And the reason why is because these are professionals. They're not here to judge you. They're here to help you. They're here to get you the help that you need so that you can live a wonderful life, which you can do even while you manage, anxiety and or depression or whatever mental illness that you have.
Thank you so much. That was so helpful and so comprehensive. I wish that each visit, even if you're going for an episodic visit, that healthcare providers do an assessment on stress. Because I think we normalize stress, and stress manifests for people in different ways. That's how I talked about it, right? Because your stress will be different from my stress.
Absolutely.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the pandemic and mental health and burnout and stress and all of that? What are some signs that people should be looking for? Because I think this is such a pivotal time in our world for people to really come to the front of the room.
Sure.
And get what they need.
Sure.
Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Absolutely, Wendy. Fabulous question. I really appreciate you for bringing that up, because, pre-pandemic, pre-COVID, I should say, many people were battling stress. They were. But COVID brought on the level of stress that no one could have ever imagined, right? Healthcare workers specifically, as a niche, have really suffered a lot. I can't even quantify in words the amount of emotional and psychological distress that healthcare workers have been under. But I have to go a bit further and say people in general have been impacted by COVID astronomically. And the losses that have occurred are very real. And I feel such sorrow for people who have lost loved ones for something that we didn't even see coming. I personally am very thankful that I never lost a family member. God is so good. I never lost a family member. Several of my family had COVID, but they were able to get through it. And in terms of nurses and burnout, burnout is a very real thing. Some of the signs and symptoms include just snapping, just irritability, like you used to be a warm-hearted, soft-hearted, willing to do anything for anybody person. And all of a sudden, you're this crass person who, is not showing that you really care. You are on pins and needles. Perhaps you have some physical manifestations, such as, problems with your gut, having loose stools, having headaches, having problems sleeping. I have a friend of mine, I met her on LinkedIn. She has an educational channel. Her name is Giselle Rosa, and her channel is called Level-Headed Mind. I would love it if people would go out there and look at her educational videos, because a couple are on burnout, Wendy. And she does a wonderful job at breaking down the physiology, because what happens is that your level of stress goes up when you are exposed to stressful events over and over and over and over and over again, right? And so normally your stress goes up and it comes back down. But if you are in an environment where the stress is on 1,000 every day and sometimes tipping into 1,500, then that's where your stress is going to stay, unfortunately. And so instead of your cortisol levels going up and coming down, and cortisol is that hormone that regulates, stress in our bodies, it's the big daddy, right? That cortisol level, if it stays up here all the time, then what's going to happen is you're not going to be able to go to sleep. You're going to want sugar all the time. You're going to want to eat carbohydrates all the time. You're going to be snapping on people left and right. You're not going to be a very warm fuzzy. You're going to be irritable. And I think many people in healthcare specifically, Wendy, felt no psychological safety to say, I need help. They felt no safety to say, I need a break. They felt like I can't possibly ask for a day off when, quite literally, there's hardly any staff here, quite literally. And so I feel like because they felt like that, they kept going every day, despite knowing they needed a break. And it has caused this great resignation. It really has, because people felt like I can't keep going. And, I am sorry that the great resignation happened as a result of COVID, but I'm also very thankful that people are understanding more that they have to look at their own lives first and put themselves first. And that there's more to a career than feeling the symptoms of burnout every single day with no reprieve. And that they have no other choices in life. And, the list goes on. I'm thankful for that reason for nurses and whoever else may have changed careers as a result of the great resignation. But for those people, I hope and pray that they are seeking counseling, therapy, that if they need to, they should definitely introduce these modalities that anybody can introduce to their lives. You don't have to go to a doctor in order to eat more nutritious foods, in order to, essentially go on diets or lifestyle changes like feeding your brain, the brain diets that are similar to keto. Those diets are very brain friendly, where you're feeding your brain ketones, which your brain loves, right? You're decreasing the sugars, the carbohydrates, those type of foods out of your diet. So your brain can function in a very focused state and not this state that's so foggy and so beaten down. People are understanding more so the importance of stretching. Like I said, these simple things that you can do, stretching, going on walks, doing mindfulness, doing journaling, gratitude journaling specifically is a big one, where you think about 3 to 4 things that you're thankful for that day. Because COVID, if it didn't teach us anything, Wendy, it taught us how to be more thankful, right? For things that we have been, just dismissing as something that was really something that we should be thankful about. We were looking at it as a given versus something that's a blessing. So, you don't have to win $1 million to be thankful for something that happened to you. You can quite literally be thankful for having a roof over your head that night before you go to sleep. You can be thankful for having groceries, for having, a family who has been protected from COVID, for having, family members who are safe and who are not, dealing with COVID symptoms or just anything, having a bed to sleep in. Like that is the whole point of having the gratitude journal. And I feel like if people did that more, it would teach them that life is not all about the glitz and the glam and this Insta generation that we're in, that's actually an illusion. We go on Facebook and Instagram and we see all these beautiful pictures of people in these exotic countries having fun and going on vacation, and the water is clear and blue. And Wendy, that is a snippet in time. And it's the most beautiful picture a person could have found. I know, because I've done it myself. You don't take pictures of when you and your husband are fighting. You don't take pictures of when your child is acting a mess and post it on Facebook. So people have to get out of this narrative that other people's lives are perfect and that their lives are the ones that are screwed up. That's just not true. We all have problems that we're trying to overcome, and we're trying to overcome them at the same time. But no one's going to display that on social media because that's socially unacceptable. So just understand that, people are going to show you the most beautiful things, but that's not their life 24/7. And I don't want people to think that because they can't show the most beautiful things in their minds, that something is wrong with their life, because that's not true. That's a false narrative.
Yeah, what do they say? Comparison is the thief of joy, right?
Wow.
Yeah. So I think it's important to stay in your lane, so to speak, know yourself, keep your eye on your prize, on your purpose.
Absolutely.
And not see what everybody else is doing. Because one thing I actually put on social media is, when I post things, people always say, oh, like and all that. And for me, it's not about optics, it's about impact. I want you to join me. Don't like or heart what I'm putting out. Join me in the efforts. Contact me. What are you doing? How can I get involved? Because that's what it's about. It's not about the optics. Like you said, a picture's a picture, right? But what's behind the picture is more so
absolutely
important. And then in regards to the Great Resignation, it's funny, I wrote an article on LinkedIn talking about stress management being the answer to the Great Resignation, because it starts there, right? Managing your internal and external stressors and being in that environment. Once you're out that environment, it's in here.
Absolutely.
It's in your mind. You got to really control. So yes. I'm so happy that, you're doing things on LinkedIn, on social media, really helping people in general, because I know a lot of people kind of see what we're doing. They may not be engaging, but we are still having impact on the people we're encountering in our network. So Ashley, before we get out of here and start with the rapid fire, do you have any parting words? And please let people know how they can get in contact with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. As to piggyback off of what you just said, Wendy, the battle is really in our minds. It really is. But there's hope. There's help. There are people more so now than ever who are available and ready to help anyone who's in need. We don't want people to get to a crisis and have that crisis drive them to the emergency room. We want you to get help now before that happens. And something else that I want to say is that, mental health, it matters. It is not this thing that we should stuff down in a closet, under, inside of a trunk and under a rug, and put it away to the side and put a Christmas tree on top of. It's just not like that. We should get rid of this shame. I say all the time in LinkedIn, when I post, at the very end of my post, I always say, until the stigma is no more, because I'm going to continue to do the work to make people feel comfortable, Wendy, to have conversations that used to be uncomfortable. That's why I'm willing to be transparent about my journey, because if I can't do it, you won't do it. and I'm a mental health professional. But if I can't do it, you can't do it, and you won't feel like it's okay to talk. And when you have mental health professionals who are very honest about their own lives, is really what connects you. It's the great connector to people. And something else I want to touch on, Wendy, I know we're in closing, but it's this superhero mentality. I was going to post about that today, but I just haven't had time yet, but I will at some point today. Nurses are looked at like superheroes, especially during COVID, because we were going through so much. But it's that very superhero mentality that made people stay and become burned out. It's that same superhero mentality that made people feel like they couldn't have a day off, because they were looked at like they would be a failure for not wanting to go to work that day, and just because you're a mental health professional or a nurse or a clinician, whatever you are, doesn't mean you're not human. You hurt, you worry, sometimes you don't feel well. And we want you to know, especially, that there is hope for you too. There is help for you too within the medical community, because so many people in the medical community are hurting. And we want you to know that there's help for you, that you can come, that you can, interlock arms with your provider and really create a comprehensive plan for you to recover and to, get into a career that or a job that you really love, and so that's what I want to say to healthcare professionals specifically. And then in terms of getting in touch with me, I am very active on LinkedIn. Wendy, I believe you're going to attach my profile, correct? Yeah.
Everything will definitely be in the show notes and the link to your website for your team.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So you can send me a DM anytime. I literally have my DMs attached to my hip. And I'm willing to meet anyone in terms of doing a Zoom call to get to know each other and to see how I can support you, because I'm willing to support people in any way that is needed. Sometimes people just need for people to have an open ear to hold space, and I'm willing to do that. So please feel free to reach out anytime, and I would love to hear from you.
Awesome. Well, let's get into our rapid fire. Is that okay? Okay. So tell me the first thing that comes to your mind to answer the question or finish the statement. Wellness means?
I would say the first thing that came in my mind was health. Wellness means health.
I know I'm stressed when?
I eat a Snicker bar. That's my go-to, Wendy. A Snicker bar or a Butterfinger. Lately, it's been a Butterfinger. I'm being very honest here. I need sugar. I know I'm stressed when I need sugar.
Yes. And your go-to stress management solution is?
I talk to my husband a lot.
It's definitely good to have an outlet.
It is, because I'm a very anxious person. I'm highly anxious, right? And my husband has the ability to calm me down just like that. We've been together for 23 years, longer, over half of my life I've been with him. And so, for me, he is the one who can help me to see the glass half full every time instead of the glass half empty, but for some people it might be to go have a walk, whatever, but mine is that verbal validation and reconnection and reset. It helps me cognitively.
Awesome. The last time you had a belly laugh was?
Oh God, I love that question. Okay, I laugh at Braxton all the time. He's my 6-year-old. He keeps me in a state of like joy constantly. So probably the last time was a few days ago when, um, let's see, we were here and I have 2 dogs, Zoe and Ziva, and he was leaning on one of them and he had his foot up and his feet were propped up on the dogs, and all of a sudden we smelled this horrific odor, right? And I was like, oh my God, what's that smell? And Braxton said, oh my God, what's that smell, mama? And I said, I don't know. And he said, Zoe did it, and so he said, Zoe's past gas. And honey, I just died laughing. I was like, Braxton, that was you. And he's like, no, ma'am, it was not me. And so he's like pleading his case. Mommy, that doesn't smell like human gas. That's dog gas. I'm like, Braxton, dog gas? Like, I never even like heard of that before. He is so funny. I love him, but he keeps me in that very childlike, side of me, in touch with that childlike side of me.
If you had a magic wand and can change one thing in this world, what would it be?
I would remove stigma from mental health. It would never exist. People would see themselves as worthy. They would see themselves as humans. They would love themselves. They would understand they matter. Money is not going to give you any of that, Wendy. I would love to say everyone would be a millionaire, but it's not going to solve problems. It's not going to solve you feeling worthless, Wendy. It's not going to solve you laying in bed all night because you think no one loves you, no one cares, you might as well end your life. When you remove the stigma, show people that they matter, they're worthy, they should be here, they have a destiny. That's what propels a person to their destiny. But when they feel like they're worthless, at some point they might do something that they're not able to take back. And if we remove that stigma, more people would get help before they get there to the point where they can't go back.
Absolutely. And what's one word that gets you going? You gain
In
momentum.
a negative?
No, positive way. Positive.
Oh. Hope.
I love that. I love that. And my last question for you is, what is one thing you learned about yourself during this pandemic?
That's a really good question. Is that a rapid fire question, Wendy?
It is.
Okay. So one thing that I learned about myself, oh, this is so good, is that my cabinets don't have to be full at all times. Is that, I can live without having Walmart at my disposal. I can live, a good life without having my refrigerator stocked. I will survive. I will be okay. We will make ends meet. We will use less toilet paper so that we can conserve for our neighbor. We will, I don't know. It's just this mentality of having plenty. It diminished because I used to be this person. I grew up very poor, Wendy. And when I grew up, we had enough in terms of just what we needed, Wendy, but it was scarce, right? And so that instilled in me this mentality of you have to have over what you need as an adult. And literally before the pandemic even began, I had stockpiles of things. I remember even when my oldest was a baby, before he was born, his closet had so many diapers and wipes that I didn't need them for a year. So I've had that mentality of having overage for so long, and COVID wiped that away. It was like, girlfriend, you do not need all this to live, honey. Because you and your overage will prevent your neighbor from having anything. And I couldn't live with that. I quite literally gave my neighbors all around me, to the left, to the right, and in front of me, I gave them things out of my stockpile as gifts when people were desperate for these things, because I had it. And I freely gave it away because, you know what? So many others didn't have it. Yeah.
Yeah, because what you really need is within you. It's nothing you can touch. It lives within you.
Absolutely.
Intangible.
Absolutely.
Well, this was an amazing discussion, and we will definitely have to have you back on the Nurse Wellness Podcast. Thank you so much, Ashley.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate you having me on.